Hey everyone, and welcome to Milo Game Reviews, where we review games both new and old on all platforms. My name is Milo, and if you like the content that I make, then please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a review when it comes out. Today we have a very special game to review, and one that has been anticipated by the gaming world for 8 years. Of course, I am talking about Knight Silksong. Now this is for me personally also a very special game to review and talk about, as Metroidvanias is actually one of the few gaming genres I do not play very much. Now I have played Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion in the past, and maybe one other game that I keep forgetting, but that's about it. Silksong is for me personally also the very first Knight game that I'm playing, and I'm happy to say that Silksong made me fall back in love with the genre, though it did also make me realize why I do not play many of these types. But first things first, it should be praised how consumer-friendly Team Cherry has been with their game and the launch of it. Since the first Knight was such a huge success with 15 million sales, the 3 members of Team Cherry were pretty much set for life. This meant that they could take their time on making the sequel of their dreams, as they had no pressure from publishers or financial pressure. They simply made what they wanted to make at a tempo that made them happy and comfortable. And then the real cherry on top by Team Cherry was that they offered the game for $20 or euros. I actually was there when Steam crashed, as I came home maybe 20 or so minutes after it had launched, and it took me a good full hour to purchase the game. Though I was not stressed about it at all. I knew that the game would be huge, so I did not want to be one of those YouTubers who works themselves into a burnout because they want to have a video out as soon as possible. So I finally managed to pick up the Steam version and have been playing a lot over the past few days. In Knight Silksong, we play as Hornet, a female insect that is armed with a needle and uses the power of silk in order to both heal but also attack her enemies. In the beginning of the game, we are trapped in a carriage, but manage to escape, and then we need to head towards a citadel that is also a popular destination for pilgrims. To be honest, whenever I always watched trailers or footage from the first Knight, I did not really understand all the hype, as the graphic style looked a bit like Newgrounds vibes, and that wasn't really my thing. But the real thing with Knight is, in my opinion, that you really have to play to understand it. When you play it and when you're in control, then everything comes together. First of all, Silksong offers much more color and variation compared to Knight from what I've seen. The first opening scene is you awakening in this gorgeous green moss forest as beautiful music plays as you make your way to the top. The animations are fluid and smooth, the controls super tight, and the atmosphere is breathtaking. It was like a light bulb moment where I suddenly started to understand. Silksong plays like a 2D Metroidvania. That means that you move in a 2D world and have to do a lot of jumping and platforming. But the Metroidvania essence comes in the form that there are many places and areas you will come across that you cannot access when you first get there. In order to reach those places, you first need to unlock skills or tools somewhere else by completing a quest or beating a boss. This means that you will have to backtrack quite often to earlier places and need to remember where certain things were that you were not able to access before. And here is the reason why I do not play Metroidvanias very often. It is because that exact aspect was always so stressful to me, that I had to keep track of where things were, that I had to make a mental note that I had to backtrack once I had a certain new attack or ability. I also make no commentary long plays over on my main YouTube channel, and playing this I realized that Metroidvanias are probably also the worst genre for no commentary long plays. Because part of the Metroidvania experience is that you are exploring a huge world with a lot of trial and error on where to go. There are many hidden secrets to find, and most of them are not essential to progress into the main story and game. Therefore, you will have a lot of times where you are not sure where you exactly need to go, or you remember that one particular hallway or door you did not try yet and have to go back to see if that is maybe the correct way. Now, this works fine in a commentary format on YouTube, but in a no commentary form, it probably is very frustrating to watch. That is why I actually started 2 playthroughs, since the game actually allows you to have multiple playthroughs at the same time, where with one playthrough I would just play at my own leisure and try out all kinds of routes and areas, and then once I knew where I had to go, I would record it for the long play. But despite the stress of having to remember where to backtrack, the world of Silksong still invites you to fully explore such an interesting world full of awesome characters and locations. You will head to different towns that will function as quest hubs, where there are shops, resting places, and message boards that offer quests. These quests often are considered fetch quests, where you need to collect a certain number of items or kill a certain amount of enemy types, but these often happen on your route anyway, so it never becomes too frustrating or repetitive. The towns themselves are all very different, and the art design of the characters is just so wonderful and cute. It all takes place in a kingdom of insects, so the creators could go really wild with the character designs. There are large armored bugs, teeny tiny flying ones, long bugs with lots of legs, and many more. Each is hand painted and so unique and memorable. Even some that you don't meet that often, like Forge Daughter, leave a lasting impression. Others that you will run into more frequently, like Chakra, who's an athletic, tall insect that sings whenever you meet her and sells you handy items like maps or markers, so you can actually leave marks on your map so you remember where to go back to and don't run into that stressful scenario I mentioned earlier. You buy these items from Chakra and the other shopkeepers with rosary beads. These can be found all throughout the world and often in hidden stashes, but also from certain enemies. The game actually has a Souls-like element to it, and that once you die, your rosaries will drop in the location where you died, and you have one chance to pick them back up. If you die again before you do so, you will lose them for good. And let me tell you that this is far, far worse than losing your souls in Dark Souls. Losing a lot of souls in Dark Souls can be annoying when maybe you've lost the ability to level up 2 or 3 times, but leveling your character for 2 or 3 times in Dark Souls really does not make a whole world of difference. But not having rosaries in Silksong means that you are very crippled in what you can access. Throughout the game, you come across these benches where you can sit, and they essentially act as a checkpoint and spawn points, the bonfires, if you will. Here you can also adjust your loadout by switching skills, weapons, and more. But for many benches, you need to pay 30 or sometimes a lot more rosaries in order to use them. And if you do not have those, you cannot activate the checkpoint, and if you are stuck at a boss and did not have the rosaries to activate the bench near it, you are looking at some really long runbacks. It is absolutely essential to manage your rosaries wisely, and the game offers some cool mechanics to do this, like having your rosary beads be made into a string necklace at a vendor. This turns the rosaries into an item in your inventory, which means you will not lose them when you die. You can then use the rosaries from your inventory whenever you come across a shop, resting point, or quick travel location for more efficient use. The only downside to this method is that the vendor will take a small chunk of your rosaries as a fee for making the necklace, so you will never get the exact same amount of rosaries in your inventory as that you paid for. And so you go through a massive world that is divided into large zones that each have a theme, color palette, and a boss, or sometimes even multiple bosses. The game can be quite challenging. This already becomes apparent during the regular exploration gameplay, as you often need to do acrobatics that need to be executed quite fast. Though the game might look simple, it should definitely not be played as someone's first introduction into video games. As you unlock more abilities and skills, you also need to often string these abilities together for combo moves in order to progress. At a certain moment, you unlock a dash ability, and then, for example, need to jump up somewhere and then bounce off a flower or other obstacle by attacking downward, and then have to dash again in order to reach a new place. Or, once you unlock the ability to glide, there are these hot air streams that will propel you upward that you then have to combine with jumping and dashing in order to avoid enemies or reach places you could not do so before. This is indeed that classic Metroidvania feeling, where in the beginning you do not have a lot of abilities, but as you play the game you unlock more and more and your character becomes stronger and more complex in how to control them. The bosses themselves are also challenging, but never feel too unfair. There are definitely those that will take you quite a bit more than only 2 or 3 times to beat, as they have a lot of moves and health, and it is all about learning the patterns in order to find openings where you can attack. Pretty much all bosses have a second phase, and some even have a third phase, where they will gain new attacks and older attacks will be altered. But because the game is in 2D, it never becomes unmanageable, as you simply need to avoid the attacks and obstacles on this 2D space. You either need to jump over something, under something, or stand in between certain areas to avoid getting hit. Some of the bosses are really cool looking and massive and feel very epic in scale with great music and tension. You start with 5 hearts, or masks as they are called in this game, but enemy attacks will often take 2 or sometimes even more hearts, and thus you can still die relatively easy. But you have the ability to use Silk and heal 3 hearts if you manage to get enough hits in, and this creates an awesome risk and reward game where you want to be aggressive in order to heal, but also do not want to get too careless. There are also a surprising amount of weapons and tools that you can find and equip to attack enemies from a distance, like throwing knives or harpoons, or buffs like a drink that will increase your movement and attack speed. This can greatly alter your playing style, and these items are often found by exploring the secret areas or completing quests. It really feels fulfilling to do the optional content and quests, since they often will not simply just give you currency, but actually a new tool or ability. So having played Silksong, it made me fall in love with the Metroidvania genre again. I realized that this genre works also so well in handheld format, as I also have very fond memories of playing Metroid Fusion in a hotel in Germany when I was a kid, when we went on a ski trip. Even if you only have 20 or 30 minutes of free time to spare, Metroidvanias are perfect to just go and explore a bit of the map and find some secrets or maybe unlock a new ability. It is easy to get lost in these giant worlds, but you always find something or someone interesting that can give you something new and valuable. Completionists will have a field day with this game, and Silksong just plays so unbelievably well. You can feel that they perfected the controls, and you feel like you are perfectly in control at all times. I have read people complaining about the angled pogo, but I believe there are also other attack styles where it does not go at an angle, and I rarely had trouble with pogoing. Silksong is a labor of love, and it has convinced me to go back and play some other Metroidvania games that I left on the shelves back then, like the Ori games. Probably one thing that I can critique a little bit is that the game indeed does have runbacks that are not ideal and take longer than they should, even if you have purchased the closest bench. Other than that, it is an absolute definition of a must-play for Metroidvania fans and the quintessential Metroidvania experience. It is available for a great price, the game is lengthy, and it just is fun all around. Just talking about it makes me want to play it again. Hollow Knight Silksong gets a 9.1. As I mentioned, because I actually kept away from other Metroidvania games, there are a lot I have never played. If you know any good Metroidvanias that you would recommend, then please let me know. I have, for example, never played Metroid Dread. Is that a good one to review as well? Or what about some of the many other Metroidvania games out there? Let me know, and I will hopefully see you all next time.